Thank you, everyone. I know it's hard when everybody wants to meet everyone, and but we also want to make sure that we maximize Jagmeet's time and have an opportunity to have Q&A with him. But of course, I don't have to introduce our friend to the labor movement, Jagmeet Singh. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to point out the amount of impact that Jagmeet and his team have had with 25 MPs in the House of Commons. Like, let's think about this for just a moment. His team was able to ensure that we have a dental care program, that we will have a pharmacare program, that we have a national childcare program, that we finally have anti-scab legislation, and not just for lockouts, but for strikes too. That we have action to tackle climate change, that we have a fairer tax system and a national school food program that we have been fighting for many, many years. So welcome, Jagmeet. We're so looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, B. This feels incredible. I often go to rooms where I've got to make the case, and I'm ready to do that. But to be in a room filled with so many allies, people that are fighting to make our country a better place, I'm so honored to be here. And to have the leader of the labor movement right here beside me, representing Canada, B. Brusk. This is amazing. Someone who says, I'm going to steal her line, but kicking ass for the working class. I love every time you say that. I'm honored to be here. And I want to thank you all for the work you do. I want to talk about the times that we're in right now and how important the work you do really is. Given how tough things are, we know that times are tough. And I'm sure you've heard it from your members. Times are really tough. We know that people are feeling squeezed. The cost of living goes up. We're seeing people struggling with grocery prices. People with good wages are saying it's tough out there. Rents are up, mortgages are up. And I got to say, one of the key ways we fight inflation, one of the key ways we take on corporate greed, one of the key ways we give more power to workers is with strong unions. You are the bulwark fighting against those challenging times. So we need you more than ever to take on the big bosses, to take on inflation, to fight for fair wages. I got to say, anytime we've seen big things happen, B went through a list of some of the things that have been achieved. Anytime we've seen incredible things happen in our country, it's when the labor movement is strong, when unions are strong, and when there's a strong New Democratic Party working alongside the union movement. That's when we've achieved big things. So I want to point that out. And I say that because if you look at the things that have been achieved, these are things that we achieved together. Each one of these things I'm going to go through, I want to point out how you, as representing working class people, unions, strong unions, have been fundamental in making these things happen. We could not have achieved these things I'm going to go through without you. So I really want to acknowledge that. The dental care, this is transformative in the lives of seniors, of young people. This is going to mean they're going to get access to dental care. And for millions of people, this is transformational. And again, it could not have happened but for the strong push from unions supporting the work that we were doing. Anti-scab legislation, again, this is something that we were proud of. It was something we negotiated and fought for. But I got to say, if the CLC wasn't pushing so hard, if labor activists, the people around this table, labor activists across this country, if unions weren't pushing for this, it wouldn't have happened. So this is our collective victory, to push the government to table this. The law of the land now, that 10 paid sick days, again, during the pandemic, we saw the impact of what it means to go to work sick and to not have paid sick leave, that workers had to choose. Do I go to work sick, or do I stay home and not be able to put food on the table? That was never a choice that workers should have had to make. And it was because you pushed so hard, and together we made that happen. It is now the law of the land. It wasn't just a couple years ago. We made this happen. The Sustainable Jobs Act, and I got to really talk about this for a moment. The Sustainable Jobs Act really fundamentally is about legislation that says if we are going to move towards a net zero economy, we have to do that with strong unions, good jobs, and making sure workers are at the table. That was never going to happen before. We saw the legislation did not include workers at the table. How can you make decisions about the future of jobs in our country, about the future of workers in our country, if workers aren't at the table? So together we fought hard, and we ensured it is enshrined in law that workers are at the seat of the table when we talk about the future of jobs for workers. Pharmacare. This is something that the CLC, representing the labor movement in Canada, representing unions, has been so adamantly focused on. FTQ shout out to Quebec as well, has been so clearly supporting that we need to see pharmacare, because this is good for workers, this is good for people. And I got to tell you, we didn't just achieve a framework for pharmacare, we also have covered 2 classes of medication in a universal and single payer model. That's important to point out. This is not just that we're covering it, we're doing it the right way. Single payer, universal, diabetes and devices, medication and devices, as well as free birth control. We made that happen together. And I want us to look at this as a down payment, as a first step towards our ultimate goal of truly universal, single payer, pharmacare for all. And we've got some more work to be done, lots more work to be done, but our next big fight is going to be on the long-term care side of things. We saw during the pandemic, it was very clear, when workers don't have good conditions of work, it directly impacts the conditions of care. Those are inextricably connected. You can't separate them. And so we've got to fight to make sure long-term care workers are supported and that there's strong protections in place for our seniors in long-term care. So that's going to be our next big battle. And I know you've been really vocal on this point as well. A lot of great union activists have been pushing, and so I got to thank you for that work. And I'm going to need your help to make that, to take that to the next level. Je veux dire que c'est clair. Ensemble, on a montré la puissance du mouvement syndical. On a montré qu'ensemble, on peut obtenir des grands résultats pour les gens. Donc, ce qu'on a obtenu, les victoires qu'on a réalisées, c'est vraiment grâce à vos efforts comme mouvement syndical et le Parti néo-démocrate. Quand on travaille ensemble, on peut obtenir des résultats incroyables. Donc, merci. Little translation delay there. I appreciate that, though. And I just want to point out a couple of things, just really quickly. I've been traveling across the country, and I've been hearing from a lot of Canadians, and they tell me that things have gotten worse over the past couple of years, and they're feeling really let down and disappointed by Trudeau. They're feeling like he's not going to be able to make things better for them. And I can tell you, if we weren't there pushing for these things, they would have not happened. He recently, Justin Trudeau recently voted against anti-scab, voted against pharmacare, voted against dental care just a few years ago. So when we say together we made this happen, we really did force the government to deliver these things. They were not going to do otherwise. But then I got to turn our attention to Pierre Poilievre. And let's also be really clear. He will put everything that we've attained at risk. Every single thing that we've achieved, he will put it at risk. And I want to be clear about Pierre Poilievre. He hates unions. This is not a exaggeration. He hates unions because unions give more power to workers and take away power from the big bosses. And he works for the big bosses. Look at his executive committee made up of corporate lobbyists. Look at his chief strategist, who is a key lobbyist for one of the largest corporate grocery stores in this country. Pierre Poilievre bragged in 2013. He bragged about being the first federal elected leader, or first federally elected representative at the time. He bragged about being the first elected federally to push for right-to-work legislation in Canada. And let's be clear, right-to-work legislation means destroying unions. That's what it is. It's to destroy unions. So he bragged about that. And his track record, we can go from his track record to his current record. He wanted to make it harder to join a union. We remember the Harper years. They directly attacked the power of unions. And that means attacking the power of workers. He voted against a minimum wage not once, but twice. When you vote against a federal minimum wage, who does that benefit? It certainly doesn't benefit the workers. It only benefits the big bosses. And most recently, he wants to take dental care away from seniors, even though he himself has had dental care paid for by taxpayers for most of his adult life. Let's be really clear about that. He wants to cut pensions. He wants to cut EI. This is actually the first plan that he announced. When he became leader, he said, I'm going to cut EI, cut pensions, and put $500 million in the pocket of CEOs to do with what they will. That was his plan right off the bat. So we have to fight back. We have to let working class people know he is lying to you when he says that he's interested in working people. He is lying to you because his track record and everything that he wants to do will make life harder for working people. He will take away dignity. He will take away the power of working people. He will take away from people. He will cut and gut the services they need. And so it's important that we have to fight back. We have to let people know who he's really in it for, what he's really about. And we have all the receipts. as the kids say these days. We've got all the evidence. We know who he's really in it for. So we got to make sure people know that. And I'm going to use every opportunity I have to make sure workers know. If you want someone that's in it for big bosses, sure, he's your guy. But he is not on your side. And so I want to put to you that we've got a choice. We've got, there will be an election coming up. I'm not giving away any secrets of when the election is. I don't actually know when it is. But we have an election coming up at some point. And there's going to be a choice that Canadians have to make. And from what I've heard from people is that they're really fed up. People are feeling really frustrated. They feel like things are getting worse, and they want change. They don't think that Trudeau can deal with the problems that they're up against because he hasn't. He's had 9 years, and they felt like he's not really taking it seriously. And I can tell you, no one's had a closer look at Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government than I have. And I can tell you, they don't act with urgency. They don't understand when workers are struggling, what that's like, what that means, what that feels like. I can tell you I do. I understand the struggles. I remember when I was 20 and my kid brother had to come live with me and I took care of him. If you ever have to take care of a teenager, that can be tough. I remember that I would always worry about him being hungry. And it was a serious concern for me. I remember having to work multiple minimum wage jobs to put food on the table. And I know what that worry is like. And when workers right now are struggling, it motivates me to try to do something to make things better. But when I see the Liberals, they're out of touch. They don't have that same urgency. And so what are the choices? If people are fed up and people are saying that we want change, what is their choice? I put to you, the choice is, there's a guy who hates unions and loves big bosses. There's a guy who wants to cut and gut the services that people need. Or there's another guy who believes fundamentally that every decision we make should be about putting working class people at the heart of it, who's proudly pro-union, will always fight for unions. That's a choice that people have in front of them. And I want to ask you, and I know B has mentioned this before, a lot of people will try to come to speak with you and try to get close to unions and during the election time. You're going to see that happen. We've known that Pierre Poilievre has come and showed up at workplaces and tried to shake hands. But I ask you, how do you tell when someone's your real friend? I say you can tell when someone's your real friend when you're in a fight. When you're in a fight, when your chips are down, when you're struggling, when you're hurting, who stands up for you then? I know that Pierre Poilievre has showed up to some workplaces. Has he ever showed up to a picket line? Has he ever showed up to stand beside working people demanding fair wages from big bosses? Never. You'll never see him there. You'll see me there. You'll see New Democrats there. But I also put it to you that I put this to you. I remember when I first became leader, 2017. It's a beautiful time. I remember. And there was a big fight, though, that we were up against. One of the earliest fights that we led when I first became leader, very soon after, there was a strike, postal workers. Our brothers and sisters, our siblings, and the postal workers were on strike. And at that time, I can tell you that the Liberals and Conservatives were competing with one another with who's going to write the back-to-work legislation faster. They were competing about who was going to vote back to work faster. We were the only party that stood against that. Only party that fought against it. We actually got kicked out of the House at the time. But we fought against that. But I want you to know that's where we stand. Who's on your side when you're in a fight? That's what you got to think about. I put to you, just recently, there was another fight. The longshore workers were on strike. And when the longshore workers were on strike, right away, Pierre Poilievre took to the mics and says, legislate them back to work. He said that right away. And I got to tell you, I know that Liberals were tempted to do that. But we came out really clearly and said we would never support back-to-work legislation. We would never support that. And we made sure the Liberals didn't do it. And this time around, they didn't do it because we were in a position where we had some leverage. And we made sure they didn't do it. They knew the repercussions they would face. If they wanted to work with us, it wasn't going to happen if they brought in back-to-work legislation. So I put to you, who's on your side when times are tough? Who's on your side when you're in a fight? And so I put to you, my whole political career, I've always been on the side of workers. Honestly, for New Democrats, it's not a matter of convenience. It's not a matter of strategic decision-making. We will always proudly be on the side of workers. We will always defend stronger unions. We will always be on your side. Always. You can always count on us. And so for that choice, friends, I want to put to you, I want to be your prime minister. I want to be the first New Democratic Prime Minister. I want to be the first Labour Prime Minister in this country. We are Canada's only Labour Party. We are proudly a Labour Party. We were founded by workers. We will always defend and fight for working people. We will always defend stronger unions, more powerful unions, because that means more powerful paychecks for people. And I know people are going to say, oh, it can't be done. It can't be done. How can you do this? You can't win. I've been told that my entire life. I've always been told it can't be done. I can tell you when we first ran, I've been told it before this, but I remember when we first ran in Peel. I ran to win a seat in Brampton. People said you could never win in Brampton. It's never happened before. New Democrats have never won in the entire region of Peel. It can't be done. People told me you got to be a Liberal if you want to win. I said, no, I never wanted the easy way. I wanted a New Democratic way. I wanted to fight for people. So no, that's not an option for me. And they said, well, you're never going to win. And we had rallies and we were building a momentum. And there's one guy who took me aside at a rally, a guy I'm sure you remember, Jack Layton, took me aside and said, you know what, this is looking exciting. I mean, I've never seen rallies this big in Brampton. I think you might be able to pull this off. I want you to know something. He hit me with the line. He said, don't ever let them tell you it can't be done. Don't ever let them tell you it can't be done. So people told me I couldn't become a leader of a national party. We made that happen. People are telling me that we can't win this. We can. But first thing is we got to work together. And I want you to imagine, just imagine, what would it look like? What would a new Democratic government look like for working people at the federal level? What would an NDP premier look like? I want you to imagine it. Imagine you've got a new Democrat premier who believes in fighting back against privatizing healthcare, who says we're going to invest in healthcare and frontline healthcare workers and ensure no one's got to pay out of pocket for healthcare. We're going to keep it public and universal and there for everyone when they need it. Imagine not having to worry about finding a family doctor because we've invested in healthcare. Imagine not having to wait for hours and hours and hours in an emergency room. Imagine not having to wait for months and months to get the procedures that you need. Imagine young people knowing that you've got a new Democratic government that's going to fight to build homes you can afford, use federal land, money, and power, not just to build homes, not luxury apartments, but truly build homes that you can afford, not-for-profit housing, cooperative housing. Imagine a new Democratic government that says, let's make it easier to join a union, let's make unions more powerful so we can demand powerful paychecks for workers. Let's imagine a new Democratic government that says, we can build an economy that's good for workers, not for the billionaires, not for the CEOs, but an economy that's good for workers, that's good for the planet, and makes life affordable. We can do all three. Imagine what we could achieve together. I would put to you, the vision of the Canada we want to build is a Canada that has less worry and more joy. A Canada that has less fear and more hope. A Canada that has less greed and more compassion. One where we look after one another, where we lift each other up so we can all rise together. That's the Canada I want to build with you. I know we can do it together. That's my challenge to you, my friends. Let's give people the real choice, a choice of a new Democratic government, an NDP premier, a prime minister, and premiers across the country. Premiers too. That's going to really build a country for all working people, for all people in this country. Let's build that country together. Thank you. Merci.
So thank you for that. We'll again wait for the media to depart, and then we'll have some great conversation.
Look forward to it. I got worked out, I got to do some water, and I got all sweaty from that.